Coach Colin here, coolest high performance coach in the world. And if you want the absolute best insights to the podcasts and videos you love, hit that subscribe button. Let's go.
There are some people who claim we are now in a deglobalizing world. But actually, I would say we have to re-globalize this world. We have to make sure that we strengthen cooperation because, as it was mentioned, we are faced with issues which are of existential importance for humankind. Our common future is at stake.
Move this man!
So what you're about to learn about today is the 5 pillars of control. And the only reason I found out about these pillars is because I decided to watch something that I don't agree with. So Klaus Schwab was speaking at the World Government Summit. This is not something that I actually, back, but I figured that I should start watching these things so I can really hear what these people are talking about. So I gave it a listen, and, a room full of people that like what he has to say would just hear these things and they would just go, yeah, this makes sense. But when I heard it, a little alarm bell went off and I was like, I have to actually talk about this because this is something that's happening to us all the time. And you're going to see what I mean when you actually listen to the 5 pillars of control and learn what they are from Klaus Schwab's mouth himself. So I think it's going to be really beneficial. You don't want to be in an echo chamber. I never want to be inside an echo chamber. There's people who are going to disagree. I disagree with what he has to say, but I still gave it a listen and I learned a lot. So let's get into the 5 pillars of control right now. Starting number 1.
Professor, a couple of weeks ago in Davos, you met almost all global leaders, government, private sector. What's your takeaway from the meeting this year?
I have seen participants enormously engaged in all the different task forces which we have organized, catalyzed, which we curate. And I think if we look at the future, what is absolutely essential is this cooperation of the different stakeholders of global society. Governments bring the directive power.
The directive power, pillar number 1. Now, we all know what governments do. We all know that they govern the people. They tell the people what to do. I would also say that government and law, or I would say like the police force, they go hand in hand because the government kind of says, this is what everybody's going to do. Officers of the law kind of make sure that you all are doing that all the time. So we all knew that the WEF had a heavy hand in government. They have prime ministers, they have deputy prime ministers, former presidents, former vice presidents, they have a whole bunch of government. So that's the first pillar of control. And I like how he calls it directive power because they direct the people. So, and a big thing to note is that they don't just tell people, what to do. They pass laws. They create policy. And those laws and policy don't just tell you what to do. They actually set up a parameter of which you're only allowed to move within. That's the big thing. So if they need to box you in to a certain place, a certain space, or, restricting certain actions, they're able to do that. And by extension, Klaus is able to do that. Let's get into number 2.
Business brings the innovative power.
So, number 2, business, because of what he just said, the innovative power. Now, what would you think innovative power is? This is what I think innovative power is when he's talking about this. Your company decides that you're all going to work from home. That's like an innovative power. Apple decides that there's no longer going to be, and phone companies at large decide that there's no longer going to be buttons on your phone. Years later, maybe they decide that the phones get much smaller. Maybe years later, they decide that it's just going to be glasses or contact lenses. Those type of innovations, again, they kind of box you in. You know, I'm sure if you're an older person, you can remember the day where you wanted a phone with buttons on it and they didn't have any options for you. And you're kind of just like, huh. And then because of that innovation, you got forced to buy a certain phone. Those are the types of innovations that are happening via business. Or even better, a certain company, when you search for your flights online, they start showing you your carbon emissions, right? Or a certain credit card company decides that they're going to start giving you a carbon emission report on every single thing that you buy, right? Those little innovations are the things that kind of condition us in a certain way. Kind of works hand in hand with government when you think about it as well, because the government, again, the whole top-down mentality that the WEF has, they say something needs to happen, then the businesses start innovating in that way. So the policies and laws start boxing you in a certain way. And then when you think like, oh, this is too much, all of a sudden, all the companies around you start setting up the exact same parameters. And that's how, in my mind, innovative power works. Let's get on to number 3.
Civil society brings the concern power.
Number 3, civil society. Now, when I heard this, I was like, oh man, maybe they're trying to be like the Ark. They're including society? I'm like, that must mean the public. That must mean the masses. I was like, we're in, guys. He changed a new leaf. He's a good man now. But no, civil societies is actually much different than what I thought it was. The term civil society refers to a wide range of non-government, non-profit, and voluntary-driven organizations, as well as social movements. So, things that are civil societies, that would be like the World Health Organization, the WEF themselves. What else? BLM would be considered one. So the reason that he says that they're very important because they have concern power is because they raise concerns to the rest of us. They let us know what we should be concerned about, right? And it kind of goes hand in hand again from number 1 to number 2 to now number 3. So we're telling you where you need to be with the directive power. I got my notes here. Then we're innovating in business to actually show you again, this is where you need to be within these parameters. And then the concern power steps in and says, you know, this is not just something that the government's doing and that businesses are innovating. This is something you need to be concerned about. There's a problem. There's disparity. There's people dying in the streets. There's this, there's that. You need to be concerned. Again, it goes from boxing you in legally to boxing you in via the technologies that are available to you and how those technologies are used, to boxing you in mentally in terms of what you need to be concerned about, you know. And whoever is not concerned, it's like, well, you know, you don't want to be one of those people that's not concerned about this. This is a real issue, you know, that type of thing. So I thought civil society was a really good thing, and it can be if used properly, but with what he has in mind and what we've seen over the past 3 years is those type of organizations and their concern power have actually led to a lot of fear mongering and, you know, mostly peaceful protests. Let's move on to number 4.
Academia brings the power of truth.
Now, if you didn't understand what he said academia brings about the power of tools. And when I hear tools in academia, I think of, you know, the best tool that every single human being in the world has, which is our mind. And that, like that tool power, I would say that's the mind power, and not just the ability to persuade someone's mind. Let's even go a step further, the ability to influence someone's mind, right? Because if you do that via academia, or in other words, school, You can dictate the way somebody thinks by the time they get out of school. We've all seen what's been going on in the universities for like the past almost 10 years. And now we're seeing it in the elementary schools. There has been a bit of washing away everything that we all, the older generations, know to be right, to be true, and to be normal within the walls of a school. That's changed drastically for kids and young adults. So drastically. And that's the best way to change somebody's concern power, or influence someone's concern power. Because now you're looking at somebody and, nobody wants to be uneducated. So, somebody comes to you who you respect in the school, in academia, and they say, you do understand why we're all concerned about this. You do understand that not knowing about these concerns is problematic. You don't want to be a part of the problem, do you? You don't want to be one of those other people, You get that whole mindset. Step further with academia. What else does academia touch on? Science, reports, studies, things of that nature, right? So that is a huge tool in and of itself. If you're doing certain studies and you're kind of pushing those studies to show certain outcomes, that way the concern that's being raised by these organizations can be validated by science, validated by experts, right? And to me, all in all, I think that's why he has academia as one of the pillars of control. But let's move on to number 5. And I think you won't be surprised at all at what number 5 is.
And maybe I should add media, which brings the critical dimension in this dialogue. And we need all those stakeholders to shape together the future.
Thank you.
So the last one, you could have guessed it, was the media. And what I like the most about that clip is every single other one that he mentioned had a power to it. Directive power, innovative power, concerned power. But he didn't mention what power that the media had. Not at all. He didn't want to say that. But we all know what power the media has. It's a very strong influence on our minds, on children, teenagers, young adults, older people. The media influences the masses, right? And they do that very carefully. They can select words that they're going to say. They can select pieces of footage that they're going to show you, and they can work in unison and just show you this message over and over and over and over again. Almost like hypnosis almost, right? And as you keep on hearing the same thing over and over again, the media has a funny thing of almost molding reality, right? Because even if you know something to be true, as the media keeps saying, let's say the opposite of what you know to be true, well, now you'll walk around and you'll tell somebody and they'll be like, no, that's not what happened. And then they'll just say what the media said. And then you'll talk to a friend and they'll be like, no, that didn't happen. And then they'll just say what the media said. And then all of a sudden it's like what you know to be true has disappeared. And it's just now what the media has told people. We've seen this time and time again. Extremely strong, arguably stronger than the government. Because when the government says something, they got to go to the media to actually get the word out. And the WEF, they're already known. I did a video about this. They have Idris Elba. They gave Idris Elba a Crystal Award for all his work. What work did he do? I have no idea.
Thank you to the World Economic Forum, Hilda. Thank you, Professor Klaus, for this honor. We are very privileged to be here and don't take it lightly.
But they have him, big actor. He even said when he was on a panel that he could talk to The Rock and he could get the concerns of the WEF across to The Rock better than, some public official. And then also when I was going through the Young Global Leaders list, because that's what I like to do on my time off, I found will.i.am. Even will.i.am's there. And now who could he talk to? Well, he could talk to any major artist in the world. basically, right? Like who doesn't what artist is not going to want to have a sit down with will.i.am? And now he can raise certain concerns. So the media, very, very strong arm. And I just want to say, when it comes to all these things, we'll just recap quickly. Government, directive power. Business, innovative power. Civil society, concern power. Academia, the power of tools, the power of the mind, I will say. Mind power. And then media. You know, I don't even know what power you would call media. I would just call media the almighty of the five, to be honest. Start watching and start seeing how all these five actually work hand in hand all the time. You'll hear something from the directive powers, then all of a sudden you'll see businesses start innovating towards that directive power. Then you'll see different groups, NGOs, start raising concerns about those same things that the first two are trying to kind of direct you towards. Then you'll see it in the schools. Then you'll see it in the media. And it will all happen all at once. It'll be like, beep, do, 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 do. It's so quick. I know, those sound effects were great, right? But yeah, I just wanted to make that video because I found it very telling. Because when they say stuff like this in these talks, it's to a crowd of people who want to hear this, a crowd of people who are on board with this type of stuff. But when we listen to it, people who feel like you and I, when we listen to this stuff, we can all of a sudden start hearing things that we need to be aware of. You need to be aware of what's going on and of what they have in mind.
If we do not work together on a global scale, if we do not formulate, shape together the necessary policies, they will escape our power